This next question was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jeff in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
You have a problem with Jeff?
Mm-hmm. Upstate New York.
Oh, okay. All right.
Caller, is the caller there?
Would the Horsemen have formed without the departure of Buddy Landel? From an outsider's perspective and hindsight, it seems like Landel's departure was a catalyst for the formation of the original Horsemen. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear your insider's perspective.
Well, in a way, it was very interconnected because, as you will recall, when J.J. Dillon, maybe not the first guy that he managed, when J.J. entered Crockett Promotions, when Dusty took the book, J.J. had been his assistant in Florida. Dusty brought J.J. up there. He managed, with Ron Bass and Black Bart as a tag team because he'd managed them in Florida, but he was also his primary singles wrestler was Nature Boy Buddy Landel in 1985. And they had done the Nature Boy program where Flair wrestled Buddy and sold out Raleigh, the biggest house they'd done in Raleigh in fucking years and years at that point. And, JJ was not affiliated with Tully, had Baby Doll. JJ was Buddy Landel's manager. Arn and Ole were a tag team, and Flair was the NWA world champion, but he was a babyface still in the Carolinas and during a lot of 85, and especially against Nikita Koloff at that Great American Bash that July. So they weren't formed as a heel group, and not all the people were in the right place. We've talked about the famous day where Buddy Landel had been out late on a Friday night after the show when he'd got to Atlanta, and he and Joel Deaton were sharing a room. And Joel gets up to go to Atlanta TV that morning. Buddy ain't getting out of bed. And Joel shows up, and people knew they were together. So where's Buddy? Hey, he's in the room. And a bunch of people called, Buddy's friends, people, like, he's got to be here because that was the day on Atlanta TV. They were shooting some kind of big angle. I can't even remember whether I ever knew the extent of what they were actually going to do that day with Buddy and propel him upward, but it was a big deal. And that's why we always said, Buddy, that was $100,000 hangover. Instead of making six figures the next year, being one of the top guys in Crockett's hottest year that he ever had in business, he grossed $21 million in 1986. Instead, Buddy got fired that day and went back to Memphis. So it cost him $100,000, that hangover. But as a result of that, when they switched things around, that's when JJ ended up with Tully. And that's shortly thereafter, that's when Baby Doll switched babyface, right? Help me out a little bit on this, the time frame. This is the end of 85, first part of 86.
It would have been a little bit after that because Baby Doll was still with Tully, obviously, for Starrcade 85. So it would have been shortly after that.
But they made those moves. Basically, Tully got with JJ, and then they switched Baby Doll away so that then... And the reason why that the Horsemen formed besides that was no grand plan. They were following the format that they used to have, especially on Atlanta TV, on a lot of Crockett's TVs, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling going back into the 70s. At the end of the show, they would have 3 or 4 of the top baby faces or 3 or 4 of the top heels come out and do a promo about their various issues, just to be, all that star power on the screen, everybody gets a word in, right? And, you've seen some of the clips. There would be on the Carolinas TV, there'd be Ric Flair, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper at the end with Bob Caudle, right, doing the heel interview. So they brought out Ole and Arn Anderson, Ric Flair, and Tully Blanchard with JJ, just as the collection of heels that were going to close the show. And that's when Arn did that promo. He looked around, he said, "Not since the days of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse have 4 men caused this much chaos," or whatever his exact quote was. And since they were all friends anyway, and they hung out except for Ole, obviously, he was
close with Flair of anyone.
Well, he wasn't. It wasn't like he wasn't friends with these guys, but he wasn't going out and partying. he wasn't going out with anybody. It was Ole, right? He was the Rock. He'll sit in the corner and give advice. But Flair and Tully and Arn and JJ would go out to the bar in Charlotte and go out to the fucking Plum Crazy and go out to the Marriott in Philly or whatever. Anyway, so it wasn't a stretch for them to be together in a group. And it just kind of happened that way. So it was a series of events, but actually Buddy and his hangover may have been the catalyst to make it possible.
The other interesting thing, too, is Billy Jack Haynes leaving at the end of 85. Because he was being set up. I mean, that was right when they were doing the TV title tournament. What do you remember about Billy Jack leaving Crockett?
Well, again, we'd worked with Billy Jack in Dallas earlier that year when he came in, in March or April-ish for that short period of time where Kerry was supposed to be doing the movie, and then he didn't get the movie, and they didn't need another babyface, and Billy Jack went back to Oregon. And then we're there in the Carolinas, and I'm at interviews one day at Crockett's office in Charlotte, and in comes Billy Jack. Hey, Billy. And of course, he had the hat on, and he was as hard as this table that I'm leaning on right now. He had 1% body fat at 275 pounds, and the absolute limpest handshake ever. He wouldn't put anything into it at all because I know he's a strange duck back. He was a very nice guy back then and very soft-spoken, but everybody always said that he went out of his way not to have a confrontation with anybody because he'd had the deal where he apparently got a fight with some guy and hit him hard enough it may have killed him. I don't want to ascribe a justifiable homicide or any other kind of homicide to anybody, but didn't he kill a guy in a fight because he hit him so fucking hard?
That was the story, yeah.
Okay, so the point is, he ain't going to squeeze your hand. He's not going to raise his voice. He stays away from confrontations, and everybody liked it that way. But he was a nice guy and a good worker. And I've seen the videos that he's done of recent years, and that was not he was a big, tall, good-looking, nice, soft, but well-spoken, friendly babyface that you didn't think was like a crazy person. And now you see these videos, and obviously something has gone wrong, but he wasn't like that then. But he was there. I can't even remember why he left that time, but he was there, 2 months? And then he leaves he never stayed anywhere besides Portland for any length of time for whatever reason.
Oh, the best is still 84 WWF, where they did promo packages, building him up. They put him on the front cover of their magazine in a cartoon with Hulk Hogan and Wendy Richter, and then he just never came.
In a year and a half, he worked for the NWA Portland,
Florida,
world class, Florida, was advertised for the WWF, but never actually made it. And not by their decision, but by his.
And then he made it in 86.
And he finally got there. And how long was he there?
2 years. 2 years.
Did he make it 2 years? Holy shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was odd, but he never stayed anywhere very long. And then as I said, I'm at a loss to explain what's happened to him since then. And we've seen those videos in recent years. I don't have any idea.
On the topic of the Horsemen, there's always been that search for the promo. No one can find the promo because it's always been said it was a local promo. No one can find the promo where Arn says it.
No, it was on Atlanta TV. I remember seeing it when they did it. I thought it was on Atlanta TV at the end of one of the shows.
There is one from Atlanta TV, and that's the first mention I ever saw of Four Horsemen, but I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe it came from Arn and maybe even Flair, where there was an insistence it was during a local promo that it was said.
Well, that's because I don't want to knock anybody, but none of these guys can remember their shit. And it's not a knock. Imagine if you did the same thing or something similar every day for 30 years. If you had been to cities where things happened, but you had been to them dozens and dozens of times, would you be able to pinpoint, oh, that was the time that such and such happened? I know I do that. Part of it is I'm a freak of nature. Part of it is I was the manager. I recorded dates and places and facts and things. Part of it was I never went out and got drunk after the matches with all these guys, so I probably remember the things that they did better than they do 30 years later. But you would find when I've tried to ask, and delve into with a great booking mind like Jerry Jarrett or Bill Watts or, a guy really like Lawler or even Flair or anybody who I've liked their career. I said, well, what did you do this or do that? Or what'd you think? Or why did this come up? They don't fucking remember. If they remember doing it, they don't get the facts right. If they get the facts right, it's in the wrong place. And it's not their fault, because for a lot of guys also, especially back in those days, it was always going to be this way. You never looked backward. You always looked forward, because what was done was done. It was no home video. TVs were never to be seen again. And you just kept doing that over and over. So even people that were involved in shit that we all remember, because another thing, I was probably a bigger fan when I got into the business than most guys were that got in as wrestlers. So I already knew more facts and figures when I got into the business as a performer about other people in the business than almost anybody else in the business did. If that makes any sense. I didn't know what I was doing, but I could tell these people what everybody else had fucking done for the previous 15 fucking years. So that's why I remember a few more things and or have a little bit more insight on things, because I've also been a very visual learner all my life. And the reason why I can remember these dates and places is because I either look at my book or I look at I've got a huge collection of newspaper ads from all the territories and all the books, like the compilations Mark James has done. When I look at that and I look at those cards and I remember writing them, when I announced them, when I did ring announcing. If I've seen something written down, dates, places, figures, I can remember that, as well as having a somewhat better than average knowledge of a lot of wrestlers' backgrounds over the last 50 years. Most of the guys didn't give a shit.
So you're pretty firm. You think the first interview was the one on TBS. That was the first mention of the four horsemen of the apocalypse with these four men and JJ.
I think it was. I mean, I'm not going to, fight Arn or anybody or call them liars or whatever, but I think it was. And I was at almost every local promo shoot. We did them 7-8 hours every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to fucking 4 p.m. at Crockett's office. And we were all there for local promos. I don't remember that where it was suddenly like, oh shit, we got to say that again. But I remember the Atlanta one. So who knows?